welcome to Senior Circuit. I'm Ashley Speliotis. I'm the Director of the Somerville Council on Aging. Today we have Emily Sullivan joining us. Thank you for coming. You're a Climate Change Program Manager with the Office of Sustainability and Environment here in Somerville. It's quite a mouthful. Okay. Why don't you explain to everybody a little bit of what you do and what your office does within the city?
Sure. Well, thanks, Ashley, so much for having me today. Like you said, I'm the Climate Change Program Manager in the Office of Sustainability and Environment. The Office of Sustainability and Environment is the department that works to improve the environmental performance of city operations and then the community of Somerville at large. And so what I specifically work on in the Office of Sustainability and Environment, or OSE, because it is a longer department name. So what I do in OSE is I lead long-range climate planning. And so what I mean when I say climate planning is really sustainability, or the reduction or mitigation of greenhouse gases, and resiliency. So improving our social and physical infrastructure to anticipate some of the impacts of climate change, like extreme heat or more flooding. And so the work that I do it because, the more mitigation we do, the more likely we are to avoid extreme climate impacts. And the more resiliency that we do, so looking at our infrastructure, looking at our social resiliency, so our communities in Somerville, the more likely we can better handle extreme weather or climate impacts.
Right. So a big project, many projects, it sounds like you're doing within the city, just trying to get in the forefront.
Totally. And I have to acknowledge that, OSC is not the only department that works on these projects. This is, these principles are worked on throughout the city departments, and so we're very lucky to have great partners in, the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, Department of Public Works, and so it's really like an all-hands-on-deck effort.
Exactly. I know you reached out to the Council on Aging recently to talk about the summer and the summer heat that we can all anticipate coming. Every year it seems to get hotter and hotter, and there's been some marketing campaigns or a little bit of information that you've been trying to reach about Heat Preparedness Week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Heat Preparedness Week, it will be May 22nd to the 29th, and we did this last year around the same time in May, and we do it more as a, like an educational communication themed week than anything. It won't be as formal or structured or event oriented as maybe some other weeks that we do. So we had Sustainable Week last week, so it was our big Earth Week with panels and talks. But Heat Preparedness Week is really trying to get information to the public about what do we do in extreme heat events, or how should we prepare. And so we define an extreme heat event, or a day of extreme heat, as a day that's over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And like you said, just based on different climatic projections and modeling, we're likely going to see more frequent and more intense extreme heat events. And so our hope is that through Heat Preparedness Week, we can tell people or give people the tips and tricks they need in order to weather those events well. So things like, your fan doesn't work super well over 95 degrees and it's not a great way to cool off. So instead, maybe close your window and shut your blinds to keep it cool and dark in your place of where you live.
Yeah, things you don't really think about typically, because you typically think maybe I should raise all the windows and have them all open or sit right in front of the fan, but now you're saying that maybe that might not be the best idea.
Exactly. So shade and keeping your blinds down is always a great way, to cool your house down in the summer. But then, in the winter, conversely, if you open your blinds during the day, it will warm up your place. So, definitely trying to use the sun's energy to either help you or stay away from you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. What other tips do you tell people or our senior community?
Yeah. And, a lot of houses in Somerville, a lot of apartments in Somerville, they don't have air conditioning, right? And so, we always recommend, first be aware of what the weather is going to be. So check the weather report. If you want, you can sign up for Somerville's alert system, so you're informed when an extreme heat event is, about to happen. And that can give you a chance to communicate with like friends or family who might have air conditioning, and maybe you can like hang out with them for the day. The city also does cooling centers, so we usually have those in the libraries, the senior center.
Exactly.
So we try to open up our buildings that have air conditioning during, those events, so folks can kind of like take shelter there and cool off.
That's right, exactly. Get a little bit of both benefits of going to the library, checking out some good books, coming to the senior center and seeing the programming that we have for the day, and increasing socialization, but keeping out of the heat. Because I can assume we all know that being in the heat for long periods of time can have some effects on us.
Absolutely, yeah. Extreme heat, I think, it has the most impact on people's health and health and well-being, when we think about, climate change and like the flooding and all of that. But, I feel like flooding is like a very important to consider, but extreme heat is what they call, right, like the silent killer. So it's really important to be mindful of what you're doing during, extreme heat events, and like hydrating with water and not sugary drinks, things like that.
Exactly. Are there any kind of signs that you would look out for in the heat to say like when this would be dangerous to a person?
Absolutely. So nausea, vomiting, disorientation, if someone's feeling signs like that, we just recommend that you call 911 and you get the medical help you need.
Yeah. But those are some good tips as well to go out into the community, and I know there's often some information about splash pads and other shaded areas around the community that people can enjoy.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know last week or a few weeks ago you mentioned your Sustainability Week and Heat Preparedness Week. Do you take community volunteers or people to be part of these weeks?
Yeah, we definitely do. So we have like a volunteer sign-up form online if folks are interested in participating. We also we have a climate ambassadors program. So there are folks who are that we work with to kind of teach them about different climate action principles. And so we're in the fourth year or the fourth cohort of that program right now. So it's great. So we have about 20-25 people who we can ask if they want to voluntear or help us out. So it's been a great community to build.
Right. And what does it take to be an ambassador or a volunteer? Are there any criteria or any specific interests or a whole variety of folks?
Yeah. So if you want to be a climate ambassador, it's an apply into program. So we ask folks to apply. And so, for example, this program started in February, so this cohort of it. So we did a call for applications in November and December, and then we selected candidates. So it's like a bit of a more thorough process. But if people just want to volunteer, they just reach out to us, and they don't need any specific skill set or interest. It's just, that willingness to maybe help the city with some of these events or campaigns.
Exactly. Help spread some education about climate change and some education, like you were saying, about the immediate effects of what we're seeing and extreme heat and what people can do to better serve. I know heat is on the mind of our seniors, and also your office's work in how to read their electric bill and the community choice electricity program. You've been to our centers in the past, but why don't you explain how that directly affects people and a little bit about the program?
Sure, yeah. So Somerville has what's called a community aggregation program, and it's called Community Choice Electricity, or CCE, here in Somerville. And so what that is, it's the city is procuring electricity that residents can purchase to fuel their home, or to light up the lights in their house. And so that happens through state legislation. So the state enables municipalities to kind of leverage their bulk purchasing, bulk consumer power, let's say, to buy electricity. So normally, right, like a municipality is just subject to the electricity providers in the municipality. So
Sure.
here, right, we have Eversource, and so Eversource owns the electrical infrastructure, like the grid, so the wires that bring everything to your home, and so they often supply that electricity too. But the CCE program, the city purchases another supply of electricity, and folks can enroll in the program and use that electricity. And so people might be thinking, well, like, why would you do that? What's the benefit of the city buying electricity?
I was thinking, what's the difference between the electricity?
Totally. And so the reason, it's beneficial in a couple of ways. One is since the city is really leveraging that bulk consumer power, we're able to get stable and competitively priced electricity. So, for example, Eversource, their residential electricity rates change every 6 months. So there's and we saw it this past winter, right? There was volatility in the market, and so the price of electricity through Eversource went up 10 cents per kilowatt hour. With something like the CCE program, we stabilize our pricing for a contract period. So we updated our CCE contract in November of 2022. Those prices will remain constant until December 2024 when we have to renew our contract. So there's less volatility. But then we really love it in OSC because of the renewable energy that we can add to our electricity products. So in the CCE program, we have 3 products with varying levels of renewable energy, and they have different, costs associated with it. But it allows us to offer our residents cleaner energy to help us accomplish our climate goals.
Great. Could you talk a little bit about what renewable energy is and why it might be beneficial for people to sign up for one of the 3 programs?
Yeah, absolutely. So renewable energy is energy that's not created by burning fossil fuels like oil, natural gas, things like that. So renewable energy, a lot of people think of solar panels, wind turbines, hydropower, things like that. And by participating in the CCE program, you are supporting regional renewable energy projects and sites. So it helps. So you get the benefit of having that renewable energy, but then supporting the industry of renewable energy too. And one thing I want to note, which it's a confusing aspect of this program, but it's an opt-out program. So with so if a new electricity account is opened in Somerville, they're automatically opted into the CCE program at our basic level. But then we have multiple levels. So at the basic level, it's, you have 20% renewables, but we have a 100% renewable electricity product. So people can opt up.
Sure.
But people can opt in and opt out and change which product they're buying at any time without any penalty. So in your electric bill looks the exact same if you are in the CCE program or if you have Eversource as your supplier. The only thing you'll note that's different is there's a portion of your electric bill that says supplier, and then it will be Direct Energy City of Somerville if you're in the CCE program, and it will say Eversource if you're in the Eversource program.
Sure. I think that is what is the confusing part to some people, and that, as I mentioned before, was the goal behind our How to Read Your Electric Bill programs and educational outreach. It's not so much how to read the cost, but how to read how much renewable energy you're opting into and what your options are for people.
Exactly. And since Eversource, like I said, owns the grid, they own all the electric, distribution infrastructure, the bill still comes from Eversource. So you won't see an obvious change if you're in the CCE program. It's just that one line, right, that says your supplier is actually Direct Energy.
Exactly. So now I'm sure everybody is looking at their electric bills and what should they do if they want to talk about changing what level they're at or checking to see where they are.
Absolutely. So they can always go to Somerville's CCE webpage, and so it's cce.somervillema.gov, and they can get more information there. You can change which product you use through an online form. But if folks want to talk to someone, they can always give me a call. They can always email me. My number is 781-823-9248. My email's online. So always happy to walk people through that process.
That's great, because sometimes it is just having somebody else look or to talk about what the options are and how the benefits are for their home and what the resulting change, if any, effects they will see on the heating.
Absolutely. And one important note that I like to emphasize is that folks from the CCE program, they're not going to knock on your door or ring their doorbell, right? Like, we're not canvassing the streets. And so if you get someone who knocks on your door and starts talking to you about electricity, they're probably from what we call a third-party provider. And so just want to acknowledge, right, that that's an option that people have, third-party, but that there are a lot of times like complicated contract terms and things when you use a third-party provider. So just a word of caution when there's so many options there, just for folks to do their research or to reach out if they have questions.
That is an important reminder, because we're also trying to educate everyone that there is an increase in people knocking at people's doors. There's an increase of people calling, but from your office and the city of Somerville, nobody would be calling and nobody would be reaching out, that it would be one of those third-party programs.
Correct. Sometimes we might send out a mailer like every year or two. You'll see the city logo on that. That website that I referenced will be listed on it someplace, so that's an official communication from the city, but no telephone calls, no door knocking, nothing like that.
Yeah, that's a great reminder for everyone, and a great discussion about two of your mid-sized programs that you have going on. But I know a huge initiative of your office is the Somerville Climate Forward update. So why don't you share with everybody a little bit about that?
Totally. So Somerville Climate Forward is the city's climate action plan. It's our roadmap for what we want to do in the next 5-10 years to respond to anticipate climate change. So we're updating that plan. It was originally developed in 2018, so we're about 5 years out, so it's time for a refresh. And so we're really hoping that folks will be involved in this update. We want to know, do the visions, priorities, actions outlined, do they still feel good to people? Are we going in the direction we want to be going in? And so I hope that folks will see us at some senior center events in the next few months over the summer. But we're hoping really to engage with the community and hear feedback. We have a Summer Voice page, so that's our the city's project page, web page, and I can share that with you if folks are interested in learning more about the plan update.
It seems like every 5 years, or is there a schedule for the updating? Because it seems like your goals are so long-term and are so necessary for the future. What do you envision as the schedule for updating, or what is the need for it to update?
Yeah, so we committed to a 5-year update when we first developed the plan. I think it's important to update every 5 to 10 years, just because it gives us those incremental goals that we know we need to accomplish in order to succeed in our larger climate goals.
Why don't you share a little bit about your climate goals in general, or what the Somerville Climate Forward goals are?
Sure. So back in 2012, the city made a climate goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. So that means, the amount of emissions we're producing and the amount of mitigation work we're doing, zeroes out. So we're not producing any net emissions. But now, under the Valentine administration, we have a new goal, and that goal is to be carbon negative by 2050. And so that's one of the big things we're going to really hammer out in this plan update. But determining, carbon negative, how we're going to get there, what does that mean, right? So if net zero was we don't produce net positive, right? So we're sequestering or mitigating more carbon than we're producing. So I would say that's a huge climate goal that we have.
A lofty goal.
Definitely.
That takes many initiatives and many small changes.
Absolutely, and a lot of collaboration with city departments, the community, the businesses in the city, the institutions in the city. So it's definitely it will be a full community effort.
Exactly. That's great. I know seniors share a lot that they would like to get involved and they'd like to have their voices heard. How can do you have different groups or different focus groups coming into play?
Yeah. So our goal is to do some more general surveying. So we'll, be sending out surveys. Hopefully that will get included in your newsletter as like the surveys are finalized. And then we're looking at doing kind of focus group oriented outreach directly with people. So, and we did this for How to Read Your Electorate, though, right? Like going to like a coffee and conversations or kind of like tabling outside of an event at the senior centers, the Council on Aging is, facilitating and just being there, being where we know the senior community will go to and trying to get insight from them at those events.
Exactly. That's wonderful. I know our social worker has been working to get the heat tips out and using her weekly tips throughout the month of May to focus on heat and focus on how to keep people safe all year. And while she's looking at the more immediate heat week and summer coming, it seems like you're focused on the next 5, 10, 15 years to keep Somerville really sustainable and climate forward, which is very great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming this afternoon and sharing about your office and the Office of Sustainability and Environment and how it can work with the senior population and the population as a whole.
Yeah. It's been awesome, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.